Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, all. I ask you to take your seats, please. Thank you. So, Jambo, Nakaribuni, and hello to all of those who are joining us online. Welcome to the consultation workshop of the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge 2024. This is an exciting morning here in Nairobi. In the agri and climate tech sectors, we often speak of innovation ecosystems. And this morning, in this room, we have, if you will, our own innovation ecosystem. An ecosystem representing Kenya's wider agri-tech ecosystem, with those in attendance including governmental officials, private sector representatives operating along the agri-food value chain, international organizations, NGOs, banks, investment funds, and more. You all play a key role in today's proceedings, and so thank you all for joining us. My name is Kevin Dowling. I am the Knowledge Management and Communications Specialist here with the CGIAR Accelerate for Impact platform, and it is my distinct pleasure to be your MC today. We have all gathered here today with one shared vision, a vision of unlocking Kenya's fullest potential in the agri-food sector to drive a more sustainable, resilient, and efficient system. This event is part of the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge 2024, a project powered by CGIAR Accelerate for Impact platform as part of the CGIAR Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT. And it's executed in collaboration with CGIAR research centers, as well as CGIAR Excellence in Agronomy, the CGIAR Initiative on Nature Positive Solutions, and Brighter Bridges. The AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge 2024 is a project dedicated to agri-food systems transformation in Kenya. And we're aiming to do so by supporting the development, the deployment, the adoption, and the scalability of high-impact, country-relevant, and science-based innovative solutions in agri-tech. Our objective here today is to foster a multi-stakeholder dialogue on this very topic and to shape the direction of an ambitious project through an inclusive process, which will ensure that in design, it is participatory and demand-driven, and that it responds concretely to the needs of Kenyan farmers and value chain actors. 86% of the participants here today are Kenyan nationals, and I don't think there's any better way to demonstrate that this project is powered by Kenyans and for Kenya. I urge you to make the most of this opportunity, this ecosystem, by thinking critically, engaging creatively, sharing widely, and dreaming big. I would like to now pass the floor to Jean-Pierre Menza, Senior Manager in Partnerships and Innovative Finance at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT, and the lead of the CGIAR Accelerate for Impact platform. Thank you, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, distinguished guests. And welcome again to the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge Consultation Workshop and Launch 2024. Thank you all for being here today, and for those following online. And special thanks goes to our partners, and in particular to the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs for supporting this event and the overall project. So when we conceived this event, our vision was clear. We wanted to bring together representatives from farmer organizations and research organizations, private sector, and capital on one stage. Our aim to foster an exchange of ideas that could help us, to better tailor the project to the country needs, and ensure that solutions we will be working with really respond to the demand of farmers and value chain players. More than 140 people registered for this event in less than 2 weeks, and over 80 of them are here today representing this incredible ecosystem. And we can say that we have almost 65 institutions in the room. The level of participation today, both in person and online, reflects a collective interest in creating an enabling environment for testing, validating, deploying technological solutions to enhance the sustainability, the resilience, and the efficiency of our agricultural system in Kenya. In recent years, Kenya agri-food tech sector has flourished. And today, with Brighter Bridges, we'll go more in details about the numbers and details of these market trends. And emerge as one of the four major countries, in Africa for the number of investment made on startups. And we know the startups are a main driver for change, right? So we see them playing a catalytic role for youth engagement, job creation, and economic growth. Kenya has positioned itself as a dynamic hub for agri-tech innovation in East Africa with a thriving startup ecosystem. Now, despite the growing interest in innovative solutions, many remain stuck in the pre-commercial stage. We have a number of solutions available, but often are not able to be transferred, as a solutions to market for multiple reasons. And the issues that sometimes these solutions they face are related to the fact that they're not always prioritize farmer-centric needs. They are not like really linked, or they don't actually respond to what the farmers or the value chain actors are looking for. Sometimes these solutions are not market viable and are not sustainable. And we don't have many opportunities and mechanisms to ensure that these solutions are brought to market. So there's not a gateway. There's not like a pathway for a number of these solutions. Now, the CGIAR and the Accelerate for Impact platform objective through the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge is to bridge this divide, accelerating the journey from conception to market-ready solution to effective market mechanism. The call for innovation will be open in 2 weeks' time, and today the designing will benefit from your input. The idea is to select 25 innovations that we will bring in to Nairobi for an in-person boot camp, and 15 of them will benefit from a fully funded acceleration program that will be executed with partners. So our goal today is to spark a constructive conversation to complete the design of this project and ensure that we can bring as many partners on board for the success of this initiative. So I ask each of you to seize today's opportunity to connect and collaborate. Thank you. And I'll pass over to Maya, our Regional Director for Africa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Giampiero, for setting the stage so beautifully. It's an absolute privilege and honor to welcome all of you and the great number of innovators sitting here, people with the ability to take risk, people who can bring finance, the needed finance for accelerating our impact and many of the innovation. So for me, it's an opportunity to just welcome all of you to this AgriTech4Kenya consultation workshop and launch. As Giampiero mentioned, what brings us all together is a shared commitment for sustainable development. And we all bring that commitment and passion and our experience from very different perspectives, from science and innovation, really bringing, really understanding what works in a specific context and what doesn't work, and also kind of bring that, really linking that with private sector. There is no development or a sustainable development without private sector. So the role of private sector in what we do today cannot be overstated. And so I just want to kind of leave here with 3 thoughts. To me, the first is the most important one is the context in which we operate. Kenya has an amazingly vibrant for innovators and accelerators and great innovation ecosystem for innovation and scaling things forward. And that ecosystem is really powered by the policies and the enabling environment that's provided by the government and the ministries and many of the public policies that is driven by the Kenyans. So those who are sitting here from the government and the public sector, what you do here is incredibly important, and we couldn't be doing this without the incredible work that you are actually fueling forward. So, and that policy really bring the needed market element for private sector to come in. So quite a number of private sector partners sitting here, including investors, including banks and national, NGOs, public and private organizations. So we are able to thrive in this ecosystem because of the enabling space provided by the government. So we hope that will be continuously supported moving in the coming years as well. It's an amazing privilege for us as an organization, research organization for the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT and the CGIAR and all the CGIAR centers and partners sitting here. I know that there are many other centers representing here from Excellence in Agronomy as one of the programs and so many other CGIAR centers here. We are constantly in the process of developing new innovations and refining innovations. But the truth is that many of these innovations still doesn't reach to the scale that we would actually like to see the impact. A scalable impact require different approaches. So there's a lot that CGIAR is also learning from it. So we want to also come very humble here. We do a lot of science-based innovation, context-specific innovation, but we also can be learning much more with all of you sitting here. How do we take some of these innovations to scale in a much more scalable than what we currently do? So we'll be, as incredibly as happy that we are hosting this event for all of you and bringing this different stakeholders together for a critical conversation on prioritization and what needs to be invested and where some of the challenges that Giampiero mentioned. We are actually interested and also will be listening and learning from all of you, and we will also take back into our science and innovation process. The third element is that we are all here to listen, learn, and have a constructive discussion. Prioritization can often be difficult because we have so many fantastic innovations that could potentially be scaled, but we also have a challenge about we need to be able to prioritize. And the prioritization often require a constructive dialogue. There could be some tension, but I think I often feel like from some of these good tension comes good outcome, right? So I believe, there will be a great opportunity for all of you to really constructively have that conversation and come up with that 10 or 15 specific opportunities that has the highest potential to take to the scale forward. So we're all here to listen, learn, and have a very constructive dialogue. And with that, and I think for me, it's more of an opportunity to welcome all of you again to this challenge and the consultation workshop, and a great opportunity to bring multiple stakeholders and putting everybody in the room. And this room itself is one of the, kind of great innovation ecosystem right here. So I'm sure that a lot of great outcome will come from the workshop, particularly have the opportunity to fine tune and prioritize what can be really taken forward with the help of all of you. So with that, enjoy the rest of the day and have all that great conversation and also a great networking opportunity for many of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, my kind welcome. That starts our packed agenda for today. And as we progress through this schedule, we can expect further interventions from speakers of diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise. And to get that going and to focus our attention on the disconnect between research, investment, and adoption of sustainable agri-tech solutions in Kenya, we have Christabel Makoha. Christabel is the Senior Director of Innovation at the Care Innovation Center. Please take it away, Christabel.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here again. Thanks for inviting me to spend the next 10 minutes just to share some of my thoughts about a topic I'm really passionate about. I'm always curious about how do you get an idea to fruition? How do you have a concept that you design, develop a business case for, and then actualize it? And what are the things that stand in the way? So one of the challenging things about being in my position right now is you're standing up here looking at very smart people. And when I was trying to think about what am I going to talk about, the challenge is how do you talk to people who are smart, who are experts in their fields? Because you know more about your fields than I ever will. And so I was trying to think through what is the most important message that I would love to pass on today. as Maya mentioned earlier on, living in Kenya, we're not short of innovations, we're not short of ideas. There's always an idea every 2 minutes that someone is coming up with. But then the question remains, why don't good ideas scale? I think a few years ago, we used to say, well, they're not really designed with the end user in mind. So then we started adopting concepts like human-centered design, design thinking, etc. And that shifted how we design products and solutions, but yet they still don't scale. So the question remains, why don't they scale? Why is it that year on year, new ideas come up, they win contests, they raise grants, but very few concepts actually end up really getting to the last mile? What is the challenge? And then what becomes our role as researchers, as innovators, as ecosystem actors in trying to address this challenge? So that's what I want to spend the next few minutes sharing with you all. But before I do that, I want to build on, some of you were here about a month ago where we had a similar gathering. So I'll build on some of the points that I was sharing last time. I'd love for you to imagine for a second that you're a Formula One race car driver, right? Everyone familiar with Formula One racing? It would be really nice to actually hear from you guys. So I'm not out here alone. Thanks, Lucy. Everyone is familiar with Formula One racing, right? So you're going round and round and round, then you come to what's called a pit stop. What normally happens at a pit stop, you stop, you raise the car, check the car literally apart, put it. How long do we think it takes to do the entire changeover from the time the car stops to when the car restarts? How many seconds, minutes? How long do you think it takes? 2 seconds? 3 seconds? Okay, any other? Minute? One last guess? 9 seconds. So it's closer to what she said. The average is about 2.5 seconds. 2.5 seconds for that car to come to a stop, take it apart, put it back together for the car to then continue. It is insane. A few things need to be true for this to actually, actualize. Number one, you typically have a team of about 20 or so people who, when the driver comes to a stop, they have one job. One person's job will just be to unscrew the wheel nut. And that's not the same person who then replaces the tire. He unscrews it, moves out of the way. And then the person who's replacing the tire then comes back in, then he comes back in and retires it again. So you take a team of about 22 people or so, each one hyper-focused on their own individual exercise, however, very aware of the person next to them so they don't get in their way. Now imagine for a second, if the car comes to a standstill and all of these 22 people come with their different machines and places them on the side. They're really good parts, right? It's a good, whatever you call the thing that unwheels the wheel nut. You have a really good part, really good tire, well designed, but you put it down and the driver has to get out of the car, raise the car, remove the wheel, basically put the car apart and put it back together. How long do you think that's going to take? Who knows? But the point is maybe 10 times, 100 times, maybe 10 minutes. And in some ways, that analogy has been the analogy that I've been carrying when I think through why are food systems not truly transformed? And the answer is not that we lack good ideas or that we lack good innovations. We have really good innovations. But either we expect the woman farmer somewhere in Western to get out of the car, take all of these different pieces that we have designed with very good intentions, and expect them to piece the car together, then get back in the car and then drive. And over again, we do this. So there'll be 3 new solutions that come in the market. We expect them to figure out how to adopt the product, how it fits in their lifestyle, then plant and maybe hope that it doesn't rain too much like it is right now, hope that droughts don't come, or hope that even when they have a really good crop, they can access the market, and that access the market, the information that they were told about the price of the market turns out to be true. There's so many moments of failure that a small-scale producer is exposed to, and we all try to design around this moment of failure, and it makes sense. You want to tear apart the entire system and design for each part of the system. Where I think we fail as researchers, as innovators, as people who are trying to work in this space is we lay it out on the side around the car, and then we leave it to the small scale producer to piece it together and run with it. And the same analogy can literally translate into the innovators themselves who are working in this space. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It's not easy to design a solution that is right, figure out the business model, raise the capital that's required to actually see the business come to fruition, and then get it to the last mile. And then have an ROI that is feasible within a year or two, because that's how much risk we're all willing to take. Whereas in private sector, it might take 3 years, everyone knows 3 years or so to actually see an idea come to fruition. Somehow, when it comes to the development sector, we expect the business returns to come after 1 year. And if after 1 year, you don't show us that you're reaching that woman, we divest and go to the next innovator. So the woman is experiencing this same moment that we're describing where products are designed right, but they don't necessarily work for them. The innovator is also experiencing the same thing, spending night and day to design a solution, do all the work, but again, the market is not working for them. And so I'd argue that there are two reasons why I think it's really hard to translate research into actionable products or translate innovations into products. Number one, as we're demonstrating, the risk is not equally distributed. And the lower you are, if I can use that terminology, the lower you are in this pyramid, the more you're exposed to risk. The higher you are, the less willing you are to take the risk, yet you're most equipped to take the risk if you are the highest part of this pyramid. But we leave all the risk to the producers. We leave all the risk to the innovators. Some of you might be familiar with IDEO, the design firm, right? There's a terminology they coin that I really like, which is human-centered systems design. And it might seem like just another terminology, but at the heart of human-centered systems design is two things. One, often we'll either do human-centered design on its own, and so we put the farmer at the middle, and everyone else can figure their way around working this individual. Or we want to do systems design, and so we do systems design on its own without the human. Neither one works. You need to figure out the Formula One race driver in the system and make sure the system works together for this person to even have a chance at winning. And so as we're starting to have conversations today around what innovations are interesting, what would it take to design an innovation that actually scale? How do you design for scale from the beginning? I want to bring it down to just those two real things, that unless we figure out how do you distribute risk a bit more equitably, nothing shifts. And unless we think about the human and the systems together, again, nothing really shifts, because the human does not exist outside of a system. And the system itself does not work if we're not thinking about the human. So we all have a role to play. I think for the researchers and for the innovators, the biggest role that we see us playing is, as you're designing your solutions, yes, number one, they need to be human-centered. But are you thinking, who do I need around me for this piece to work? We can't continue working in silos. I think one of the previous speakers mentioned this. We all sort of work in silos, partly because we're competing for the same funds over and over again. And so it pushes us to work in silos. But none of us win in the long run. So how do we actually, yes, I can think about my individual problem that I care about, but how do I keep an ear out for whom do I need to partner with for my solution to come to scale? I do not have to be the person who fixes the entire system, but I am responsible for figuring out who do I need for the system to really work for the person I'm trying to design for, aka the farmer, because they're the most important person in a food ecosystem. For the investors and the market facilitators in the house, someone needs to play the role of figuring out how does the system need to work, and sort of pulling the strings to say, you with the wheel nut, you're the one who goes first, then the wheel change comes next, then this happens next. That is often an underfunded space. I think a lot of people assume that somehow the market will organize itself, but it's a very important role for someone to say, how does the market need to organize itself? What are the incentives that the market needs, and how do we piece all of this together? So there is a role there for people who are market facilitators to navigate around. And last but not least, for the investors and people with capital, how do we deploy patient capital? Right, as I was saying earlier, the risk is so high when you're innovating in this space. And yet consistently we design programs that require results within a year. That doesn't make sense, because what it does is it pushes all of us for the easiest thing that we can win at. E.g., I'll just focus on sharing information about rains. If I'm a farmer, whether you tell me it's raining today, or if I didn't know, it really doesn't matter. Information is important, yes. But unless it's pieced with, okay, it's going to rain, so this is what you need to do, here's how you adapt, here's the capital to set up a greenhouse, as an example, it doesn't matter. So when we design projects that are so short term, 6 months, 1 year projects, in order to be able to report back to an investor or a donor, it pushes us to the lowest common denominator, to the lowest hanging fruit. How do we create the space for people to be truly innovative, to test, to change when things are not working and pivot very quickly? That requires a different mindset for the people who are holding the bag. We need to be able to be willing to take risk, to absorb some of the risk, and create space for all of us to learn. So with those few remarks, I'll just summarize and say, number one, as you're having conversations, think about, is the risk equitably distributed? And if it's not, what can I do in my role? Sometimes the risk means you're risk sharing, sometimes means you're subsidizing, etc. But think about the risk. Number two, think about human-centered design, human-centered systems design, so that the human works in a system and the system does not work independent of the human. I wish you all good deliberations as you have conversations. I'm convinced that Africa can feed the world, and we keep saying this. I think we've been saying it for 10 years, but something needs to shift in how we're thinking about innovation in this space for that to become a reality. So with that, thank you and have a good day.
Okay, thank you very much, Christabel. That was great. Next up, we have a lineup of distinguished high-level stakeholders of Kenya's agricultural sector and innovation ecosystem. One by one, I will give the floor to each of them to provide brief opening remarks in the context of the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge. I kindly ask all the speakers to keep your interventions below 5 minutes, and there will be further occasion for interaction later. First up, we have Nixon Gacheo, and he's the Senior Director and Senior Digital Officer at AGRA. Thank you, Nixon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. People sound like you never took breakfast. Good morning. Yeah. First of all, thank you for the organizers for inviting me to just share briefly about some of the things that we see from the perspective of AGRA and the partnership that we're also having in pushing some of the AgTech, some of the projects in AgTech space. So I was asked to speak about two things. First, to reflect about the current, Kenya agricultural and the AgTech space sector. Then secondly, to speak broadly about what I think an initiative like this could achieve in the light of the AgTech sector. So I think one of the things, and thank you so much, Christabel, for highlighting some of the things that I would like, and because of what she has spoken, I will, kind of cut down some of the things that I want to speak about. But number one, I think Kenya is renowned, like one of the speakers saying, Kenya is renowned to have a very good environment, ecosystem for AgTech to thrive. And not only AgTech, but technology in terms of digital, right? Whether it is fintech, whether it is other space. But we also must appreciate that AgTech is relatively new in the space, and some of the challenges we are even talking, some of the challenges raised are alive to us, because one of the things that we are seeing from AGRA perspective is that the challenge we have with AgTech, that one is you're creating a system for someone who is not really tech savvy. People who are not willing to learn new technology. I'm talking about the average age of a farm. And so it makes it a bit complex when you want to approach this discussion on, first of all, scalability and also, scalability and also sustainability. The conversation even gets interesting when you say, look, we want to be able to solve this by, creating sort of, for lack of a better word, a buffer between the farmer and the technology to be able to translate the technology. I think Isabel has mentioned, if the farmer gets maybe an information like it's raining tomorrow, so what do you want him to do? So you need somebody who is an intercessor between the technology and the farmer to be able to translate that information coming from that technology to say, look, if it's raining, we expect you to do A, B, C, D. And as Zagra, we have created that intervention through our voluntary or the VBA or the CBA model, where we train lead farmers who try and understand this technology to be able to be an intercessor with the farmer. The reason why we chose this approach was because we believe also farmers have trust issues, but if they have one of their own who stands between the technology and themselves, then they're readily able to accept the information or the solution coming from the AgTech. The number two thing that I want to talk about is that the Kenyan government, and somebody mentioned this, the Kenyan government has been implementing policies that enable some of this, initiative to promote agricultural development. One of the things that we supported from the agri side was what is known as the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy that actually identified 7 very important use cases, digital use cases that I want to talk about briefly. I've segmented this into 3 broad kind of areas. One was to increase smallholder income. And how do we do this? We must first of all know who these smallholder farmers are. And therefore, one of the use cases was to look at how do we have a platform that can register farmers so that we know who are we dealing with as a farmer. Sometimes we call them growers in other countries. But that was one of the use cases. How do we have a platform where we can actually know and register our farmers? The second issue around increase of smallholder income was about looking at improving the farmers' practices. So the e-extension part of it, how do they get information about what to plant, how to plant, and so forth and so on. The other one, which we classified as the boosting of household food resilience, was around how do we as a country monitor our food security. And these use cases went to what we call the food balance sheet. In Kenya, I think we call it now the war room, where we know what we are producing, but we also know what we are utilizing as a country. And the last one was cross-cutting, which we are looking at how do we, even as we develop these use cases, how do we put in inclusivity in terms of gender, and also in terms of monitoring whether we are actually doing what these systems are supposed to do. So M&D also becomes a very interesting subject in that case. Oh, I'm going to wrap it up. So I think one of the things that this forum offers, and somebody said, is one is partnership offers, and to answer what the worry that Christabel has, I think partnership for me offers the platform of risk sharing, so that we are able to come together to say, look, we are experiencing all these problems, but how can we together work together to solve some of these problems that we're experiencing? In case of scalability, in case of sustainability, how do we, structure a program so that they are like one person that went ahead of me said, there are no short term, but we can handhold some of these innovators to be able to really help them develop systems that can be sustainable and also scalable. The other one, of course, is capacity building for these people, and and I'm being told that I need to wrap up. But I think for me and from where I sit, it would be good to. We don't know everything. That's why we are here to also listen and learn on how we can help this ecosystem grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nixon. Okay, so next up we have Professor Ruth Onyango, founder of Rural Outreach Program Africa. Thank you, Ruth.
I have nothing written, so just stop me anytime. How is everybody? How are you? I'm here because I like continuing to connect, right? Yeah, but if you want to know more about me, just Google me. But I'm told also ChatGPT also has me, so you can just find me there. You see, I'm also tech savvy, even at my age. Yeah, I like these kinds of meetings, but I think there are just too many. We have too many meetings. We spend too much money on meetings. We talk too much. We write. We keep the papers in documents, and they stay there. We get promotions. We get a job, the contract ends, and we are looking for the next job. I'm an academic who went to the ground. Mid-career, I went to the ground, honestly. And what was bothering me at that time, to see an emaciated, hungry African child. And even now, it still bothers me. And even now, they are still there. So ask yourself, so why do you do what you do? For just a job? Why do you do what you do? I say, a healthy African child. I have one in my house, a grandbaby. He's so beautiful. So beautiful. I'm at airports in Amsterdam and I see one being advertised for fundraising. It is scandalous. It's not right. I'm an African woman, I'm Kenyan, and I'm proud to be that. Next time, I still come back like that. I thank God that I can reach this age. A professor, an intellectual, a scientist, a leader. I've been on CGIAR boards. I started with IPGRI. They found my work on indigenous vegetables. I took them to parliament and now they're in supermarkets. They were very useful during Corona. I served on the CIAT board. I left because I had a family emergency. I left early. Many of you know of me, many of you I know of, and imagine I'm still here anyway. But let me tell you, and I'll tell you things which no one else will tell you. I'm not looking for a job. I don't have a job I'm going to be fired from. Meeting after meeting, innovation after innovation, too many acronyms. And we're targeting a smallholder farmer. You know that smallholder farmer fed Kenya in 1963. Now they can't even feed themselves. Innovation, okay, I can still have a smartphone. I have a project now, someone has given me some money to reach smallholder farmers. Many of them have these tiny phones, these tiny things. They still have those little tiny things. And you come to Nairobi and you think you're better than New York, better than Paris, better than Rome. You think this is Kenya. No, this is not Kenya. So look, I've been everywhere. I just wanted to tickle your brain. Why do we still have hunger? Why do we still have malnutrition? It is scandalous. And I'm one of those who started saying, yes, Africa can feed the world. I'll go to my grave, get to heaven before Africa feeds the rest of the world. Let me just finish by saying that what I've seen that is a big problem, there is funding. There's a lot of money around. Ruth cannot even get that money to do her work on the ground. We don't get enough resources on the ground to work with the farmers. Those farmers needed extension. We don't have extension. We're extending through the phone. No. Please, when you go to your group, or just one of you, if I've touched you, okay, look, you can find me anytime. Now I just mentor, I tell my stories and so on. You can find me. Kevin, I'm finished.
Just in time. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Next up, we have Dr. Catherine Kalelu. She's the Senior Research Fellow of the program and Program Head of the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security at the African Center of Technology Studies, ACT, and Wageningen University and Research. She'll be speaking on behalf of Professor Tom Ogada, the Executive Director of ACT and Chair of the Board of the Kenyan National Innovation Agency. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, that's a hard act to pull. Yeah, I'll try and inspire a bit. I think that was very provoking, Professor. So thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Professor Tomogada. Clearly, I'm not him. He's more tall, dark, and handsome. Clearly, I'm not, but I'll try and represent him. So I come from the African Center for Technology Studies. We are an African-led research and policy think tank established since 1988, so we're about 36 years old. And we work with the understanding that science, technology, and innovation can really solve the problems of the continent. So sustainable development through science, technology, and innovation. We have been a research and policy think tank for a long time, but I think now we see ourselves more as a research policy think tank and do tank. So I think we're moving towards more the doing, which is what I think Professor Nyango has insisted, that we need to move away from thinking and researching and really doing things. So at ACT, we have 5 program areas. I work in the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security Program, but we also work on climate resilience issues. We work on digital economy, science, technology, and innovation and knowledge systems. Then we also work on gender, youth, and inclusive development models. So we're really pleased to be here this morning because what the AgriTech4Kenya initiative really resonates with the work that we do at ACT. And I think this is an opportunity, and I echo what has been said before, that this will require partnerships for us to really address some of these intractable challenges that we seem not to really break through. So I just want to highlight some of the work that we are doing and to just show areas where we can collaborate and create synergies even with the initiative that's being launched today. One is we recently established the Green and Digital Innovation Hub. We are supported by GIZ, and this hub is based at the Konza Technopolis. So we're building a campus out of Konza. And the purpose of this is really to enable capacity building and support innovation, incubation, and acceleration, the usual speak that we do, but we want to do it very collaboratively. So that's why we think being here today is also an invitation for us to really see how we can collaborate with the initiative. And the purpose of the Green and Digital Innovation Hub is really to work with micro, small, and medium enterprises, and to see how best we can support them to really get their innovations and solutions to the market at scale. So scalability is also very close to what we want to do. And most of the innovators that we're already interacting with are focusing on the agri-food sector. So this is why this is really timely. Also, recently we ran a program that was a scholarship program where we supported about 52 scholars, MSc, PhD, and early career researchers who are working on responsible artificial intelligence and looking at how we can build that capacity in the continent. So the program worked across 18 countries in Africa. And so a lot of these scholars, early career scholars and PhD and MSc students really were looking at solutions that were targeting agriculture. So about 60% of all the solutions that they came up with were agri-tech focused. And one of the things that happened at the end of, I think we have, most of them have graduated now with interesting innovations, but the challenge again is what do you do with those innovations? So we're seeing how we can work with them to really look at opportunities to get them to the market. So this program could be one of those platforms that they can also consider. And we do the same also in the Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security Program. We work across the chain, so it's not just necessarily focusing on smallholder farmers at the farm level. Obviously, we work with them, but also looking at some of the solutions that we need to unlock across the chain. So more recently, we've been working on sustainable cooling and cold chain innovations, smart solar dryers to really build capacities for developing and value addition of smallholder farmers. Yeah, okay, great. So I think the last point I just wanted to mention, because I was told I have to mention this, is that Kenya has just recently launched the 10-year Innovation Master Plan, and that master plan, led by the Kenya National Innovation Agency, provides the important anchor for AgriTech for Kenya. And one of the things that is ongoing is that it's developing intellectual property policy and strategies. And I think this is a key anchor that should be considered when we have conversations today around this initiative. So I just again want to thank the organizers for inviting us to this table for the conversations. And I look forward to the deliberations and what will come out of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Next up, we have Brian Wambani. He's an investment director of CAMCO and an external member of the Climate Resilient Africa Fund's internal committee. Thank you, Brian.
Keep it short, but just quickly thank you for having me. And just again, thank you, Professor Nyango, for that speech. It was quite inspiring. And also Chrisabel, Ms. Makoha, that was also quite inspiring. I'll just explain why I'm here. So I'm Brian Wambani, and I'm with CAMCO. We are not we are in the energy space. We are renewable energy providers. We fund renewable energy projects, small to medium-sized renewable energy projects. However, we're in partnership with the Climate Resilient Africa Fund, which is an agri-tech platform. It's an agri-tech fund based out of Cairo, and they look they're looking for investments in sub-Saharan Africa. So they've been working, making investments in startups in the climate resilience space, in the agri space, in the Middle East and North Africa region. And now they've partnered with us to come and understand what they can do in Africa. So my goal here is just to understand, it is to learn. And I'm really, really just grateful that I came, because that call to action was, was just quite eye-opening, because that has been the same story we've had with energy. We have enough energy to power the world. We have enough energy to power ourselves. Why don't we have it? We're actually coming out with actionable items so that we're not here again next year speaking about the same things. Thank you, and look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you.
Okay, so now representing the distinguished Senator Ledama Olakina, the Minority Whip of the Kenyan Senate, we have his personal assistant, Alicia Mealy. Thank you, Alicia.
Distinguished guest, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Elisha, personal assistant to Senator Ledama, Senator of Narok County. If agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will have a chance to go right. It's a mess, Swaminathan. Today, as I stand before you, I'm filled with a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. For too long, Kenya has faced the challenge of importing food despite our bountiful land. The statistics paint a stark picture, but they also illuminate a path forward, a path of innovation, collaboration, and hope. I stand here not just as a leader, but as someone who shares in the dreams and aspirations of every Kenyan. I believe with unwavering conviction that we have the power to transform our agricultural landscape and secure a brighter future for generations to come. In the face of climate change and water scarcity, the urgency of our mission cannot be overstated. We must embrace sustainable agricultural practices, harnessing the power of science and technology to overcome the obstacle before us. Together, we can turn challenges into opportunities and pave the way for a more resilient, prosperous Kenya. In the initiatives outlined in the Big Four agenda and Vision 2030 serves as a blueprint for our journey ahead. They remind us of the importance of research-driven innovation and the need for collaboration across sectors. As we embark on this journey, let us remember that we are not alone. CGIAR stands beside us, ready to lend their expertise and support to our cause. But our journey does not end there. It extends to every corner of our country, to every farmer, every woman, and every community. Organizations like Marco's Milk Cooperative movement remind us of the transformative power of grassroots initiatives. They show us that change begins at the grassroots level with individuals who dare to dream and act. As leaders, innovators, and stewards of our land, we have a responsibility to support and uplift these initiatives. The AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge 2024 represents a unique opportunity to do just that, to invest in the future of our country and unlock the potential of our agricultural sectors. As I conclude, I urge each and every one of you to embrace this moment with courage and determination. Let us be the architects of our own destiny, shaping a future where no Kenyan goes hungry and every dream has the chance to flourish. Together, we can build a Kenya that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay, with that, we can bring the opening remarks to a close, and I'm going to welcome Hangil Song to the podium. Hangil is the data lead at Brighter Bridges, who are co-powering the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge 2024. Hangil will present Brighter Bridges insights into how we can empower emerging markets for agri-tech innovations. The floor is yours, Hangil.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks. So I was invited here to have 10 minutes to actually then bring data to this meeting. And I think I got a little bit ambitious to fit a lot onto these slides and did not realize the room was going to be quite big. So I'm going to ask to share the rest of the slides with so that you guys can actually see the data points. So what I'll try to do is I'll walk through the 5 main points that I am presenting for my data, but also I'll try to walk you through as much as possible. But if you guys have questions after reviewing, please come to me and we can discuss a little bit further, as I know it's a lot of information to be packed after we've already had a lot of information to process. So all the data that we're presenting today is from our new initiative called AgBase, which is co-powered by Brighter Bridges and also Mexico AgriFin. And this is a platform that we're actually gathering these broader ecosystem data into one platform so that other people can also access what all the ecosystem actors are doing. So this is about private sector investment information, but also we dive deeper into the solution level as well as who else, the academics, the investors, basically who else is really engaged in this ecosystem and making that information available for other people to see. So the data that we're sharing today is basically from that 10-year information that we're putting on AgBase. Please, thank you. Great. So as I mentioned, the 5 main points that I wanted to talk about is this. First, when we compare Kenya to the rest of the African ecosystem, Kenya is home to the largest agriculture ecosystem. The second, and when we look at the capital that goes into these agriculture activities and AgTechs, what we're seeing is that on-farm activities compared to the rest of the value chain, so post-farm, retail, consumer, on-farm is the largest segment that is getting capital. The third part though, when we dig a little bit deeper into these on-farm activities, one thing that we're seeing is that we're actually beginning to see beyond just the fintechs, the advisory, we're seeing more innovation-related items and solutions to come up, which is, I think, is the relevance for this meeting here. And fourth, the support for agri-tech startups still, I think, is a little bit on the earlier end, but what we are also seeing is a sign of bit of conglomeration or consolidation of some of the existing agtechs and the rise of the new startups that are coming in or new agtechs that are coming in at earlier stage. And fifth, what we're seeing actually is, interestingly enough, AgTech in Kenya actually has some of the largest women participation in terms of women leadership compared to the rest of the continent. So let's get to it. So first, Kenya is home to the biggest AgTech ecosystem in the continent. What I mean by that in terms of the capital flow is that total funding that we're able to see in the last 10 years totals over $800 million. And this is excluding some of the loans and things that are not visible for us, which we collect public information. So if it's a private loan from banks, these are the type of information that we're not going to see, just as a disclaimer. So just publicly known funding is over $800 million. And this is actually close to 60% of total agri funding that goes into the continent. And this is actually concentrated about a little bit more than 200 deals, which is about a third of total number of deals in the continent. And then there are also over 20 deals that go over $20 million in the ticket size. And we are looking at, and this almost 200 deals is at 70, also less than 100 deals. So meaning many of these companies are actually going through multiple rounds. What we are saying, and again, I'm sorry, the letters are quite small. Again, I didn't expect them to be quite large. About the products by funding volume, when we look at it, some of the largest products that are receiving capital is farm management solutions, agriculture marketplace, and then restaurant retail tech. But I'll go a little bit deeper into this in the next slides. Some of the things that we can see is that, so for our data, we look at it in 4 categories, meaning on-farm, post-farm, and then retail, and then consumer level. And what we're seeing in the second graph here is that we are beginning to see almost a hike up in all of the different types of, all throughout the value chain in the last 3 years. But where we are seeing a huge hike in is actually in the farm management services, as well as at the retail tech and the restaurant level information. So we see this agriculture going from just on-farm, but also down the value chain into how that goes into more of restaurants and retail spaces. So if you can just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And this large ecosystem is actually unsurprising given that these are just few that we're able to map about the Kenyan agriculture ecosystem. Is what we're seeing is that not only are the agtechs just flying solo, we do see that there are these huge networks of other actors that are in the space that is helping the agriculture tech innovation ecosystem to actually process and scale. And this, I think, goes back to many other speakers' point is that innovation alone is not happening by itself. It does require this wider network of wider network of support that comes from all different stages. And then, so observation number 2. So earlier I mentioned that the majority of the funding is going on-farm services, but with also the rise interest in the post-farm services. What I mean by that is So the first two charts, we're looking at the funding volume as well as the number of funding that goes into these four categories of the value chain. And clearly we can see the blue line here is the on-farm activity. That is the area where we're receiving the most attention so far, meaning that these are actually working with farmers. These are giving farm advisory services as well as actually connecting farmers to the market. So these are the services that I think AgTech and the Ag Innovation has been focusing on over the last 10 years. But we are also seeing in the yellow graph, or the yellow line, that there is a little bit of the jump in the retail spaces, which is really connecting farmers then to not just the end users as personal households, but also sending them to businesses. But also we are seeing in the green, the darker green chart that there, and the lower green chart, that in the last few years, we are actually beginning to see a bit more in the post-farm services, meaning actually working on the logistics of how do we actually ship what we made on farm or distribute what we made on farm to the other stakeholders that do need to access them. So we are seeing that the value chain is actually expanding a little bit more. And actually then to make this information a bit more granular, I want to go into the observation number 3, which is, okay, let's dive into them, these on-farm services and what we're seeing in terms of the actual solution or the products that are being developed and scaled. What we are seeing is that first 4 lines up here in the categories is, I think, what we would imagine as kind of the big 4, right? The farm management advisory services, the agriculture market spaces, restaurant and retail tech, and agricultural fintech, which I think is more of those market-driven solutions. But what I think is actually a good news is what comes after that, which are, in my opinion, are a little bit more on the innovation and research supported products. And I know that it's a little bit difficult to read, so I'll read it out loud. So after the first 4 large products, it goes into agriculture, biotech, bioenergy, and biomaterials, agro-climate risk intelligence services and products, home and cooking technology, novel farming systems, farm robotics, mechanization, and equipment, and then logistics transportation. So as you can see, after we go through some of the larger products that receive funding, we are seeing that the products that are receiving a bit more interest require this heavier dose of innovation support, research, and I think on the ground type of product development to make sure that innovations that happen in these rooms are actually used on the ground. And for the interest of time, I'll move on to the next. Support for agriculture startup is focused at the early stage, and I think this does have some limitation or some implications on how these solutions will scale. However, I want to also preface and say this is also, we're going to see some good news, I think, because we're looking at the whole space as a whole. I think it's important that we also are able to look at it by certain products within the agriculture or certain value chain and seeing how they're growing as well. So if we just look at it as an aggregate information, so the first pie chart, what we're seeing is the number of funding, right? So the dark green and the second dark green are pre-seed and seed and then incubator and accelerator level capital deployment, meaning more than the majority of the funding is still at the early stage. And that's understandable. This is a tech space, innovation space. There's meant to be a lot of these type of funding that goes into these very early stage ideas. Now, we're here to talk about how to scale those initial funding, right? And that goes into the latter 3 of the pie chart. So Series B, Series A, well, and the last one is Angel, which is quite limited in this particular space. So the good news, I think, then, is on the second part, we're still seeing that the dark greens are really the majority of the stages that we go through over the years, right? So if we look at the second chart, we do see that out of the entire funding frequency, we do see a lot of the greens. But what we are also seeing is that that yellow portion, the stage A to stage B funding, is also increasing a little bit more over time. And I think what this is signaling is that there is a little bit of the conglomeration or consolidation of the existing companies that we saw in the top 4 earlier. So the farm managements, the marketplaces, fintechs, those are actually growing a little bit more mature. So there is that layer of maturity in the space. But I think with the new type of solutions that are coming up that are more research and innovation related, those are the type of products that we are seeing that green part in the recent years. Those are the type of companies that are coming out that are requiring that early stage capital as well as the different types of support. And I think where our aim is making that yellow part go a little bit higher in the coming years for these different types of solutions that are coming up in the space. The last bit, this is, I think, some of the areas that we're looking at a little bit more recently, considering that ag space especially is not just about, of course, feeding people, but I think it is also related to the larger agenda of how do people become more resilient. I mean, this topic of more sustainable development that we're talking about, which also has to involve everyone, right? And we started looking into, okay, what does the entrepreneurship space look like in ag tech, especially when we divide this up by gender? And what we are finding is that, interestingly enough, the ag tech leadership in Kenya actually is the leader in terms of gender engagement or inclusion. What I mean by that is that the first bar chart that we're seeing, and I know the green colors can be a little bit confusing to see, so I put a little bit of the red dotted line there. So what we're seeing is that when we look at the team leader composition of ag techs in Kenya, there are over 22% of mixed gender founders, and then over 26% of women-only founders that are in the space. That brings up the space to about almost half of the ag techs in Kenya being founded or led by women-led teams. And this is in comparison to the rest of the Africa or African average, which actually is below 20 to 30%, depending on how we divide up the regions. So what I'm trying to say is that we all know that climate risks or climate resilience cannot happen without involvement of women and youth. And I think in Kenya is actually on the right track to actually make these ag techs that are way more inclusive. And I think that's a good trend. However, this may be at the start. Women are more visible in these spaces. How do we actually make sure the products that are also being made by women are also servicing women and youth, or the more or less resilient, or people who need more support in the resilience efforts coming forward? So this is something to take with us, I think. I think the start is there. It's really about how do we then support those women founders and entrepreneurs in making products that actually really serve the wider audience. So I'll stop there. There are a little more slides of information that other people can see, but thanks for your attention, and looking forward to having more discussions later on. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hangil. And I will make sure to distribute the slides as well that you didn't get a chance to see. So across all our speakers up until now, we have already gained widely varied individual perspectives. Let's now open the conversation up to a wider range of voices. We have a highly topical panel discussion in store for you now, where an impressive lineup of panelists will explore the strategies for supporting agri-tech startups in Kenya's economic rise. Moderating this session is Anthony Mahira. Anthony is an investment manager at DOB Equity. I invite all the panelists to your seats. Please do so in the order on the slide that is now following. And Anthony, you can take it from here. Thanks, Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. As Kevin says, looking forward to a really invigorating discussion now. And thank you all for making the time. As been said, my name is Anthony with DOB, a leading impact investor here in East Africa. And I'm thrilled to be moderating this panel discussion. focused on reimagining the agri-food systems here in Kenya, as well as more broadly, the climate tech innovation ecosystem. As we've heard several times, despite Kenya's abundant fertile land, the existential crisis posed both by climate change and water scarcity has left Kenya with a national food import bill estimated in the billions of dollars. Now we've seen various both private and public sector led initiatives, public sector, Vision 2030, Big Four agenda, and so on. But today what we seek to do is explore solutions under the umbrella of the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge to explore solutions that will help catalyze food systems transformation here locally. Specifically, we'll seek to do three things. The first is discuss the problems and opportunities with the agri-food system here in Kenya. And then we'll seek to explore how this innovation challenge could unlock the tremendous potential of ambitious entrepreneurs and scientists, both within this room and without. And finally, what we'll seek to do is understand and help refine how the priority areas could better be developed to help unlock innovative demand-driven solutions. And so we'll get into it. And first off, we'll quickly go around and have each of the panelists introduce themselves super briefly. So name, organization, role, and then we'll get into the questions. From a process perspective, in case we do run out of time, to whiteboards at the back corners, on the windowsills, there's post-it notes, you have pens, and feel free to post any questions that don't get to within the Q&A we'll have at the back end of this session. But let's go ahead.
I'm Lucy Kioko, work for the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture in East Africa, and I'm the regional director.
I'm Sirika Gadabati. I'm the program director for Mexico AgriFin. Happy to be here.
Good morning, all. My name is Murad Satas. I work for CGIR, a very different acronym of scientists, and happy to be here.
Morning, everyone. My name is Malvika Bensali. I am the programs lead at Penge Accelerator. Happy to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is
Good morning, everyone. I'm Esther Kimani. I'm the founder of Farmer Lifeline Technologies, an agri-tech company.
As Kevin said, a diverse panel that will do justice to this topic. But now starting off with, as I said, getting into the primary challenges facing the agri-food sector and broader climate tech innovation sector here in Kenya. So over to you, Siaka, if you could touch briefly on sort of what do we need to do to develop and deploy sort of innovative solutions addressing food security, climate resilience, and equity in this space?
Thanks for that question. And I think all the speakers that came before actually addressed that at length. It's a good thing that we're starting with the problem, because one of the issues in the sector is that a lot of the technology companies do not start with the problem. Yeah? We've all had this solutions looking for a problem, yeah? Instead of problems being solved by those solutions. So that's a big issue. Maybe to kind of summarize some of the things you heard in the morning, I think of it in two big ways. Number one is the context. The context within which the ag techs, the fintechs that you're inviting into this space are going to be working in. And the first one has been said by lots of these colleagues is that, number one, you're working in a low-income environment. So average age, about 60 years old, average income, probably less than $2 a day, depending on value chain to value chain. So you have to take that context into mind. Are you going to charge that farmer for the service? Is there someone else who's going to be willing to pay for that service? And then how do you design? Christabel talked about human-centered system design. But to some degree, many times, even those researchers going to do that research, ask the right questions and get those answers, but they don't ask the right questions for the problems that those individuals are facing. A 60-year-old person and perhaps some 20-year-old person doing that research is not catching the nuances that could be hidden in that conversation. So a lot of work has to be done in terms of designing for that low-income population. The other thing is, of course, seasonality. Again, this was mentioned by many of the speakers. You are working, or your enterprise or your innovation has to factor in the fact that you're only going to have 1 or 2 or 3 seasons at max for any service. So how do you build a sustainable business around that seasonality? And in that case, what kind of funding can you attract based on the way your revenues would be projected to grow? Comparing it to fintech that grows continuously, people are actually borrowing on a continuous basis, you'll be seeing a much longer pathway to sustainability. Are the current assets, financial assets, capital markets designing products for such a long runway? And what do we need to do to rethink how those products are designed so that we are providing the right capital to these organizations? I think another point that has been also talked about to some degree is the public sector. The public sector has a very powerful role to play in creating an enabling environment that would support these entrepreneurs. And I know the speakers have talked about the positive side of that, but there's also a negative side where we've seen that there's an overstepping in roles. Yeah, for example, sometimes the public sector might provide subsidies or actually directly involve themselves in activities that entrepreneurs were previously engaged in. That way, they disrupt the market and disrupt the opportunities for revenue generation for those entrepreneurs. So again, with the agtechs that are coming in, the startups that are coming to the ecosystem, how do they maneuver around public sector interventions, really understanding the policy framework and the potential interventions that the public sector will be taking towards the particular markets that they're working in. Last but not least, on the context, I'd like to talk about the fact that majority of the value chains are unstructured. And then back to the system thinking issue here is that in unstructured value chains, you have people who have been entrenched and benefit from that lack of structure, that lack of information asymmetry. We often call them middlemen in the system. And so you as an agtech, you're either thinking about, 1, do I collaborate with these middlemen? Or 2, do I disrupt the market completely? Both approaches require a lot of resources to engage. If you're going to collaborate with the middlemen, then you have to engage with them, understand the way they work, and then build models that can actually facilitate your product. On the other side, if you're going to disrupt the market, then you will meet that tension. And how you challenge and maneuver around that tensions will determine whether you'll be successful at the end of the day. One last point I'll talk about is now the enterprise or the entrepreneur, which is the other dimension that we have to look at. How does this entrepreneur define their business model, the right model? I start off by saying it's about finding solutions to problems and not looking at solutions, finding their own ways into the market. Yeah. So how do you engage and how do you support the entrepreneurs to really figure out what are the key problems that they need to address? How do they design their products and services? How do they identify the right channels to get into the market so that they can be sustainable in the long run? I'll stop there and give space for the other speakers, but yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sieka. And remaining on that theme around creating that enabling environment, it would be really interesting to hear from you, Lucy, just given your broad development sector experience, your role here at Syngenta Foundation and prior to that. But what do you see as the critical conditions and mechanisms required to foster an environment in which these startups can thrive? And if you could, on a related note, also touch on the barriers that folks around this room and sectors represented here should be solving for.
Thank you. I think all investors need finance. If you want to start a business, you need finance, whether it is in the form of grants, credit, venture capital, angel investors. And I might add that investment needs to be very patient. Don't give people money and then within a year, 2 years, you expect them to give you a dividend. At the foundation, we have incubated and commercialized Acre Africa and Farm Force, and we have others in the pipeline. It's taken us almost 10 years to get Acre out of the door. Now it's been bought off by Zepri. And even then, it is only now that Acre looks like it might make some money. Farm Force, it took 5 years and a lot of stumbling along the way. But I believe now they are doing well as one of the pioneer market traceability management information systems. So very patient capital or investment. We cannot speak enough about enabling policy environment. Things like business registration, taxation for startups. The KRA will ask you after 3 years, if you're making a loss, like they asked us about one of the technologies or upcoming startups that we are incubating. If you're still around for 3 years, you're hiding money from us. So it's post-COVID, and we know what COVID has done to businesses. Dispute resolution. People fight over intellectual property. And I'm glad to hear that now something has been done about intellectual property. When you go to court, it takes forever to get resolution. After, by the time you get any responses, the business is dead. Data protection, both for the startups and the people whose data is being collected. All these things need to be in place. Infrastructure. People develop apps and so on and so forth, but you don't remember there's no electricity in the rural areas. Even solar is still nascent. There is no Wi-Fi, and if there is, it's expensive. So how do you expect that technology to ever turn into a business? We cannot emphasize enough about the return on investment for farmers. Farmers are very rational. The typical farmer I know is my mother. But if there's no money in it, she will not use it. To her, it's a complete waste of time. So farmers must also be supported to make money. Technologies that we are bringing to their doorstep. Skills and development. If you're starting a business and you cannot find skilled people to employ, then it becomes very difficult for you as a business person. So what can we do? One, of course, is capacity building and mentoring for the entrepreneurs. It's one thing to have a technology. It's quite another to make a business and a profitable business out of it. Our graveyard is full of dead startups. We also have boiled eggs. In the words of Robert Yahweh, who is one of the leading tech accelerators I know. So sometimes we are actually incubating boiled eggs and it will never hatch because it's an idea that is not going anywhere. And we need a dose of realism, the realism that the good professor has talked about. And then this thing of impact wave riding. You know, you are here, you have something and you drum up something, you talk about it, you advertise it, so much PR, you get so much money, but you forget that you're here to do a business. When all this impact money is gone, then you only have a shell. So we must support our startups to be realistic and to think like businessmen. Collaboration, that has been talked about, because it's only then you're going to accelerate and get access maybe to end users and all these people who have aggregated end farmers and so on. Lobbying, if it's possible, for the right policy environment, and investment in skills gaps. The foundation has done that. We've realized, for example, there's skills gap in indexed insurance. So we have collaborated with the university and started a talent pool where we pick the best students and nurture them to become experts in agricultural insurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. So over to you, Murat. I know you wear many hats, and I'll ask you to wear two of them now, as a scientist and investor, drilling down into the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge. How can this challenge effectively drive agri-food systems transformation here in Kenya?
Wow. First of all, like we've been talking about problems, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of complexity. So the question is in both scientist and investor, what we can do. I really love what Brian said in the beginning, so that when we come here next year, we don't talk about the same things. I think actually science can do a lot. When we think about science, we always think that we have a problem, we research, we have a technology, we have a solution, we have an answer. But also science can be utilized to connect the dots. Kenya is a complex system. There is so many things are going on at the same time in the finance and enterprises and so on. We cannot plan and we cannot improve this without science. We need complexity science for Kenya to bring it that scientifically and make sure that all those beautiful efforts are actually working and going in the same direction. So the pitch here, Kenya cannot be improved without science and complexity science. So I think for the scientist colleagues here also, it's not about really developing the technology. We have a lot of capabilities in Kenya to develop technology. We have financial instruments. We have actually a lot of, R&D solutions. But how we combine is a scientific question. And I think that's the priority for scientists to help Kenya. I've been listening and we've been doing a lot of work to connect the dots in a scientific manner. I would have like a 2-minute speech here, but after listening, it's totally gone. I will just reflect on what's coming. I think we need to really bring the dots together. And I see the problem as a triangle. We have AgTech, we have finance, and we have science. So how do we bring these three together so that it works beautifully? And then the questions like my colleague here, so what are the pain points of all these three? So what is the pain point of AgTech? They waste a lot of time chasing funding. They waste a lot of time to do R&D that has been done all the time before. Instead of focusing their core services, do it. They chase funding, they chase R&D. We come to the finance. What are their problems? They keep funding the usual suspects. I love the bottlenecks, by the way. I will keep using it, referring to you. What is the second problem? For funding technical assistance is very expensive. When we look at the most of the accelerator programs, if you want to bring technical capability, we have colleagues, it's so expensive to bring these scientists, who have, all those complications. When we come to the science, what is the problem? First, they don't know how can they impact best. They don't know those use cases who will leverage over capability, with capacity there. And also, they don't know how to access the impact funding. To do the impact, you need impact funding, and scientists can contribute. So if you try to bring all those together, and the answering the question how, I think it's about what I call impact packages. All of us need to come together, design those impact packages that actually integrates AgTech profiles, what are these primary offer, core advantages, funding instruments that use the intelligence and AI and all those capabilities that's coming, and finally, R&D solutions that will become part of the triangle. Just to wrap up, I think science needs to help with complexity science in Kenya. It should forget about doing the fields and research and anymore. It should really connect the dots. And we need to design, with the help of governance and governance actors, those impact packages that brings together AgTech profiles, funding instruments, and R&D solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Murat. But staying with the challenge, we'll be keen to hear from you, Malvika, how you see this challenge, refining the priority areas that I think we're familiar with, just to ensure that they're designed to support the development of demand-driven solutions.
Thank you. And I think I will be at the risk of repeating what has been said in this room a number of times. we come to a conclusion that yes, we have agri-tech solutions, but number one, are they actually solving a validated problem? Number two, after solving the validated problem and you have come up with a solution, is your end user going to accept that solution? And yes, if they want to accept it, how are they going to accept it? Do they have the means and capacity to even accept that solution? Once we have been able to cross to that stage, and I want to just resonate with what Murat has said, how can we make sure that these agri-tech systems and the challenges and the packages we are creating for them are actually creating some sort of an impact for them or are going to be meaningful for them? And I'll say this in two ways. Number one, we need to understand that this solution cannot be developed in a silo. We need to appreciate the interaction with academia, with governments, with the end user community, the civil society, and then the business community. All these actors need to be in the room for this agri-tech solution to scale. And without even a single player in the room, commercialization is going to be a challenge. Number two, as we are now designing the solutions for them, take a holistic approach. Start talking about the challenges. We've spoken about the role of accelerators coming and supporting on operational capacity, but it stops there. We can maybe help with access to findings, strengthening the business model, making sure they have a beautiful pitch and story to say. What next? They need the support of science to make sure that this solution is validated. It's going to make sense in the context. Fine. Apart from that, what more? Making sure they are compliant, not only with the policies or they are aligned with the policies, but also legal challenges. We have come across AgTech solutions who have, yes, oh, we are in line with the solution. We know it's going to make sense to the community or the farmer. Fine, let's come to now your legal compliance before you even go to access to finance. We have a lot of investors in the room and we have a checklist. We're gonna go check, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? And they're like, oops, we didn't think about it. So as you notice, these challenges are multifaceted. And therefore, just to even sum it up, we need to take a holistic approach that targets access to finance, access to market, operational capacity, alignment with data and policy. But this will have to be facilitated by the key stakeholders, and all of these stakeholders need to come together and design this package then.
Thank you, Malvika. And the development and deployment of this high impact solutions will require coordination and collaboration across a very diverse set of stakeholders. I think, Annie, you're uniquely placed to speak to what that coordination looks like and what we as sector actors will need to do to drive it.
Thank you. I think I just want to restate a little bit because I also run the risk of repeating myself, right? I mean, it's very clear that coordination is needed. And actually, I would say it's urgent. I think we need to go back to why the AgriTech4Kenya, what is the purpose? And if we really focus on what the purpose is, one, looking at improving farm productivity to solve for food security and nutrition, and also looking at how we can power the economies through agriculture. I think really remaining focused on why that purpose is really enables us to look at what is the coordination and what is everyone of those stakeholders that the panelists have talked about required. What is their role? Going back to the question, I think that Christabel was talking about in terms of how a pit stop works, right? It's because they know the purpose. Each of them knows the role that they're playing. So I think it's so critical that we look at not getting bogged down by the challenge. The challenge is there, it's complex, but it's urgent really that we get together and stop the competition around funding and look at really the challenges that we're experiencing now, especially more with climate change. So I think I'd go back to, I think the proven solutions are known, right? We all know what a farmer requires to improve their productivity, right? So we have, for example, the access to inputs, the extension services that goes with that, the infrastructure that's actually really is needed to, one, provide the market once they increase their yields and enable them to increase their incomes and become resilient to climate change. So I think really focusing on, proven solutions and bringing what the actors, looking at the roles of the actors and what they bring and bringing it all together is going to be important. And so again, I'd go back to looking at, yes, the problems are known, but start this challenge and learn as you learn, refine. If you look at One Acre Fund, for example, started 2006, only serving 40 farmers. Right now in Kenya, we're serving 1 million farmers, and across 9 countries, we're serving a total of 4 million. It's just the ability to, one, remain farmer-centric, but then be able to bring the solutions that the farmer needs to improve their yields and incomes that's going to be required. And looking at, for example, in Kenya, as you start looking at, for example, the complexities around counties, what is the policy and environment around that? What is the infrastructure that is required to enable this to happen? So I think let's not get bogged down, but let's come together really and take this to scale. I think having the scale in mind is important because then in terms of looking at, for example, the investment that's required, we have said it needs to be patient, but it also needs to be longer term, right? Imagine if someone gave up on One Acre Fund in 1 year of their starting, we wouldn't have reached the 4 million. So I think really ensuring that, that patient is also sustainable and that also that the impact is being delivered is important.
Well said, Annie. And Esther, I think with the innovation challenges focus on the innovations that will go through this accelerator program, your perspective as a founder is incredibly valuable. And it would be very interesting to hear your perspective on how the challenge can be designed or refined to ensure that the solutions that sort of get through this process are not addressing just the immediate pressing challenges or problems that we're seeing, but contribute to long-term sustainability within agri-food and sort of the broader climate tech innovation ecosystem.
Thank you for the question. I'll start by breaking down what Farmer Lifeline does. At Farmer Lifeline, we use AI-enabled cameras on farms. They capture images of crops, and in the event of a pest or a disease, farmers are notified through SMS on the mobile phone. And why SMS? Internet connectivity is only about 18% if you look at Kenya's statistics right now. And so the best way to communicate is through the GSM technology, because all of them have the small button phone. We'll call them tululus here in Kenya. And at least they're used to reading an SMS. It would be easier to convey information that way. And one of the gaps that we also identified is that we have bodies like the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization that does a lot of research. They have seeds, they have information that barely gets to the farmer, and we can simplify that information in form of an SMS, and it will get right to a farmer in a rural area. So when I look at the ecosystem in the startup world, I'll paint a picture of who a founder is, not just here in Nairobi, but I'll talk about me as a young girl from Nyandarua and how I've gotten to where I am here. I'll talk about 2 aspects. When we talk about the patient capital, and I'll talk about mentorship. So when we are referring to patient capital as startups, we are not necessarily looking for cheap capital. It's patient in that it will give me ample time to do the research and development required, do my market research, and help me with the iteration of my product. Because remember, I'm coming from campus, I'm very young. I don't have collateral. So if I go to a bank, the likelihood of being given a loan is close to 0%. And those who did take me to school are not giving me money to go and chance on a startup. Then when I look around me, I also need a team, because when you're talking about investor readiness, they will ask you, Esther, who is in your team? and you're from campus and you're thinking, how do I pay a data analyst expert? How do I pay a finance personnel so that I have my audited books ready when the investors are coming? How do I get that one prototype to begin working? And so when we're talking about these accelerator programs and programs that are coming in to cushion and to take the risk from the founder, we're talking about that patient capital that will work with me as I begin the business. Sometimes, like for me, I started with the sole proprietorship, and through mentorship and being given that patient capital, I was able to register it now as a limited company. And you see, that's growth on its own. And when we talk about mentorship, at Former Lifeline, we started with a very simple technology. It was only sending an alert when there was a pest or a disease on the farm. And one of the questions that was asked here by one of the opening remarks, so what? You've sent me an alert of a pest or a disease, and so what? And that means I have to go back to my process and go back to the farmer and say, what do you think this SMS should have said? It should have told me there's a pest and you should get this kind of pesticide for you to spray. And then you realize that with your technology, you recommend pesticides and forget that there is the knowledge that smallholder farmers have had over time, and you're coming to, just impose technology on them. And then they tell you, wait a minute, young lady, how old are you? How old are you? How much farming do you know? And of course, you'll stand to listen, and they'll tell you sometimes aphids don't need pesticides. Just intercrop spinach and spring onions, and you'll be done with the aphids. And me, as Esther, as Farmer Lifeline, I take my tech team and I tell them, when you're sending an SMS to a rural smallholder farmer and it is have these options: the pesticide, intercropping spinach with the spring onions, or mixing garlic and water for them to spray on the spinach. So I need mentorship even as I grow to learn that it's not just about me from this side of the tech, the developer, but to also look at the user and develop my product as I look that it's user friendly and it's developed from the user's. Something else is that over time, Farmer Lifeline has realized more potential than when we started. We collect a lot of data from our technology. I'll give an example: traceability of food. Because I am on the farm with a device, I can tell the seed, the fertilizer that has been used, the pesticide, how organic. And I can say I have a farmer in Kiambu who has 90% organic food. Now, there's an export company that needs that kind of data. And because they know Esther is a young founder, she may not know the value of her data, they will run to Esther. And they will get that information probably for free, or at a very, they'll say thank you as a stipend. And then I'll realize later on what kind of value I had as a business. But if I had a mentor to tell me you also have gold within your business and don't trade it for less, this is how you go about such people. Have this kind of documentation for you as a startup. Protect yourself when you're going to these meetings. Have your CTO have at least a contact somewhere. You not necessarily someone you've paid. You could have a friend who's a live friend who could help you in such a conversation. And mentorship will also help us even monitor whether what we are doing on the ground is sustainable. So there is the aspect one of bringing down technology to our users. I cannot go to a farmer and tell them AI, but I can tell them this camera can detect a pest or disease just like your naked eye, and it will recommend the pesticide. Haven't I broken down that technology to the language? Then two, we also translate the SMSs to local languages so that if they're not able to read English or Swahili, they can see it in their local languages. Boil down the technology to the user. And on the other side, mentors for us also as we grow as startups. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. I think I interrupted a round of applause, it sounded like. Yeah, and I think on that note, really helpful, real world examples. And I'm sure the team is taking notes, and that will be helpful as the challenge gets refined. At this juncture, I'd like to open it up to Q&A. There should be Kevin or are there mics going around the room already? There should be mics going around the room. So I'll open it up to Q&A. And feel free to either direct the questions to a specific panelist. If not, I guess as moderator, I'll allocate it. But we have hands up already.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Sheena. I'm from Kuza. And I just have a question to, I think, maybe all the panelists to a certain extent. And following on from the questions we spoke, the discussions we had earlier this morning, everyone sort of talked about the fact that we need this ecosystem approach, or we need to find a way to make sure, different people work together. And I'm telling you that analogy of the racing car and the pit stop, it will stick with me forever. So thank you so much for that. So following on from that question, how can you guys, as people in this space, the funders, the partners, the ecosystem players, and I guess all of us in this room, how do we incentivize that collaboration? Because I think somebody mentioned it already. We're all competing maybe for the same funding, the same attention. So it's very difficult for you as a startup to actually collaborate, like you said, on that data piece, which might be helpful for a scientist, which might be helpful for another startup. So how do we, when you're designing this kind of program, this AgTech challenge, how do we design to incentivize collaboration? Because otherwise we will talk, and I think this was mentioned in the room, we'll come, we'll talk, we'll share, we'll go back, we'll come back next year, we'll talk. But how do we actually incentivize that collaboration piece? Because I think without that, it'll be another talk show.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Mwagi. I'm from the Forum for Agriculture Advisory Services, Kenya. And I have two questions. The first one is to Esther. Esther, you are doing a great job. We are happy. Now, I don't know how you are able to get your farmers pay for the surface, given that extension has always been a public good, and you also want to pay for your checks and your bills. And then we have the issue from Lucy on the issue of startup. I think I was very happy giving us how you have been able to walk the journey for 10 years, 5 years. How does the issue of affordable credit affect this startup? Because our interest rate in this part of the world is a bit high compared to other regions, which really increases the risk when the financial institutions are dealing with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Geoffrey Angela from Cereal Grower Association and Farm to Market Alliance. My question goes to Esther. We work with the smallholder farmers and also to some extent medium scale farmers. So my question is, maybe what are these geographical areas have you started covering, or because it is a startup, maybe you are still like sort of starting, but if you are already implementing, I would like to know the counties where you are already operating, so that maybe I can do a follow-up to see whether some of our farmers maybe can start benefiting from such technologies, which sounds so interesting and good.
Maybe we'll take those questions and then come back to this half of the room for a second round of questions. The first question was the only one not allocated, around how to incentivize collaboration. And so perhaps Annie, you could start, and Murat, you could add to it.
That's a really great question, and one that's complex, right? It does require, I think, in my view, a facilitator that helps all of the actors see the shared interests, right? So in this case, for example, the alliance and the people behind the design could actually serve as that role of facilitating to see the shared interest. So the policymakers will be able to see the interest from, a policy perspective, right? In terms of how can agriculture, how can this program enable food security and, climate resilience, but also be able to power the Kenyan economy. So that's already a very strong interest right there. And the policy documents that do state those the interests. And then looking at the agri-tech entrepreneurs themselves, and is being able to see what is the potential to deliver solutions in this environment. So again, so they are able to see their interest from that perspective. And then civil society bringing in, for example, the aspect of inclusion. Because although we say that, some of these solutions are, if you look at Kenya, there's, gender empowerment, I think someone said. But if you look at different contexts, there are barriers, specific gender barriers to access to technology, to the capacity building that I think Esther talked about. So I think being able to have that actor there, they are bringing in their shared interest in terms of how do we bring in inclusion, and then facilitating that in a way that sometimes it can seem very complex, right? But I think there has to be then this motivation to start and to learn and refine. So I think, and that's something donors are not able sometimes to understand. They expect that you design the project and then you implement, come report back, and let me see the impact that you've had. But things don't work like that. So I think bringing that understanding that there is need for iteration, there's need to enable that iteration so that you're looking at how risks play out and then refining and scaling. And I think going back to the shared interest and looking at why you're doing this, what impact do you want to together bring is going to be very important as that something that holds the stakeholders together, and they're able to at least not compete, but see each other as, enablers of each other's shared interests.
It's beautiful. So one of the things I was going to say is that. So then I can focus on the other one. But, facilitation is beautiful and so on, but it won't work alone for Kenya. As you said, it's a complex system. So we need intelligence. We need to study who's doing what, where, with which resources, on which profiles, in which climate conditions. And we need to bring these complex information scientifically together. And this has been done before. It's not new. Like you go to Google, you translate, you write something, and it translates into 100 languages, right? So if we can actually bring all those complexity of the words together and make something meaningful, or you go to ChatGPT, Gemini or Bard, you ask a question and you got an answer, which is a written document. So the same principles can be applied to understand how we can work together. There are already proven ways to do that. I think the only thing we need to do that, we need to recognize that Kenya is too complex for human alone. Let's use science to discover that complexity, and there are ways of doing that. So in addition to facilitation, human interaction, that's always the cure, but we need intelligence, and we need really the state-of-the-art science for that.
No, I was just going to add, talked about the intelligence beautifully. I was just going to add that platform, examples of an intelligent space that allows you to visualize the interactions between different stakeholders in the food system. So on the art-based platform, what they're looking at presenting is all the innovators, all the enablers, and all the investors who are interested in pushing funds into the ag sector. So that's a starting point where you can visibly see where funds are flowing, where innovations are focusing their efforts, etc. And you can start to build models that allow for better collaboration within the ecosystem.
Thank you all. Esther, you had a couple of questions your way, so feel free to respond to all of them together.
Thank you for the opportunity. Also regarding the first question, just a quick thought around that on incentivizing There are countries I look at like Tunisia, and I appreciate their startup ecosystem. They've come up with an ecosystem where individual players commit to incentivize startups that are in that ecosystem. For example, World Bank, and they know World Bank will channel money towards that ecosystem. So any startup in that ecosystem is assured finance. Courtesy that system. So yeah, it also boils down to personal commitments, not just talking about it, but leaving such a meeting with a commitment of what the support will be towards the Agri4Kenya initiative that we're having today. I'm leaving with this commitment. It's not just going down on paper, but it's a commitment even before everyone who was here. So such ecosystems, I've seen them work in different countries. And something like Tanzania, I think they've recently had a program where it's again a startup ecosystem where the government is even allocating land to youth. And any youth who gets into that ecosystem is cushioned from, registration of business. It's free. They get the land to farm for free. They get certification of exporting their produce for free. Again, that's again an incentive you're giving to a young entrepreneur, but it comes with that personal commitment from whoever is the party involved. So there is not only talk, but there's also work in it. So there are two questions that are directly addressed to me. How do I get farmers to pay? Now, in Kenya, the ratio of our agricultural extension officers to smallholder farmers is 1:1. One agricultural extension officer is rationed to about 1,000 smallholder farmers. The likelihood that an extension officer will visit a smallholder farmer in a year is again almost close to just nil. Again, remember the incentives that they get also from the government. I may not talk much about that because I don't know about that kind of effort. There's the full going to all these farmers to go and give them these services. And that is the gap that we are coming in to fill. We realize that there is no technology that is on the ground 24/7 affordable for the smallholder farmer. Look at asset-light technology, expensive for the smallholder farmer. Look at a drone, it charges $100 per hour to fly over a farm, and too expensive. So what we did is come up with a technology of camera that is on the farm 24/7, and we lease it at $3 a month. Now, you need to realize that the farmer that we're working with, they'll pay for value. They'll pay for the value, and it comes at a cost. Free, and then they test it. And then what happens, because in rural farming communities, it's more community-based and information travels very fast. That if they use it for 3 months, they've gotten these timely recommendations, their yields have increased, they know what pesticides to use that are effective, and it's easier now to pay the $3 a month. And if they're not farming, they are free to leave the technology. I take the camera and I use it on another farm. So we started with $1 a month, just 100 shillings a month. And that's the time that I met Agra, and I think they're here, they can attest to this. I met Agra, and I pitched to them, and they were like, I think there's something about this technology that we need to invest in. And they did support me through the Go Getters award, and I got 50,000 USD so that I could invest again in my iteration, because there's a farmer would tell it's $1, and they're like, how can a camera be costing $1 on this farm? Why? Because sometimes the payers of the technology are not the women we are finding on those farms. It could be their sons, their daughters, who are even here in town, but one take the baggage of their parents of paying. So when you tell them 100 shillings a month, they're like, there's something, how can a technology like that cost $1? And through the training and capacity building I got, I was to increase the functionality of the device and the value that you're giving, not only pest and disease, add the seeds that they can plant. based on their geolocation and their climate conditions, then take it to $3 a month and let's test it. And we got the willingness to pay. So we at least able to break even for every device by the 9 month. Then that we are currently in Kiambu and Nyandarua. Nyandarua being that's where I was born and charity begins at home. And Kiambu is because that's where I found myself. And that's where we found a lot of smallholder farmers and their land fragmentation would fit even what the technology was able to support. However, we're looking at a program like the AgriTech4Kenya innovation, and we're thinking if Farmer Lifeline could get such an opportunity to scale even further, because we have 5,000 smallholder farmers, how much more with such a program that such a program has for us. So yeah, we only have 5,000. Kenya, we have 7.5 million smallholder farmers. So we still need that support because we can only.
Thank you, Esther. We're running out of time, so I'll ask Lucy to briefly respond to the question on credit, and then we'll wrap up.
In Kenya, affordable credit is an oxymoron. And this is not the kind of credit that you give startups. I believe there are sources of credit that are friendlier, they are cheaper, and I see them being advertised on LinkedIn all the time. And I hope this Agri-Challenge will be able to link the startups to this sort of credit. And we must remember the first rule of starting a business, you don't start a business with a loan. Loans are only, or credit, you only take credit when the business is mature, has a strong cash flow, and is able to pay back. So let's look for alternative sources to banks and MFIs and digital credit, etc. Thank you.
And just to add one thing to that, as pertains to the farmer getting access to credit, right now about 70% of credit to farmers is actually provided by the agribusinesses they interact with. So whether it's input loans, they're given those inputs on credit, not cash credit, but they're given the inputs on credit, and then they pay back when they sell the output to those institutions. What we've recognized is that a lot of these agribusinesses are struggling to have the working capital to actually continue to provide enough access to credit to their farmers. So we're looking at how do we improve the capital stack so that these agribusinesses can get access to low-cost capital so that they can continue to provide this credit. An important thing is that agribusinesses are able to provide credit at a very low cost. And that is because they understand the context within which the farmer works with, and they walk the journey with the farmer until the farmer harvests and produces their product. So in comparison to financial institutions like banks that need to take a lot of risks into accountability and they do not understand all of the challenges within the value chain, let alone least of all that they are not end product. So it's much harder to actually bring down credit from a financial institution perspective. And then last but not least as well is a focus on the policies that support credit distribution in the country. I think very recently Kenya is looking towards enacting a bill that will allow financial institutions to ride on guarantee schemes and have not make provisions for losses on those schemes. That's a very important thing, because if you still have a guarantee scheme but you have to make provisions for the losses, then you're less likely or less incentivized to actually then distribute credit into the market. So thinking about the policies that affect credit distribution is also a very important thing that needs to be looked at to ensure that credit is affordable to the small scale producers.
Thank you very much, Seka. Apologies that I'm having the red flag waved at me. I think there's a conversation that could go on for a long time. As mentioned, we'll have post-its and any sort of unanswered questions could go up there. But we hope to continue this conversation. It's an important conversation to be had. But I'd like to draw this to a close now. Thank you, the audience. Thank you, the panelists as well, for making this an engaging discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you all our speakers today. I think we got many input that would be relevant for our the designing of our AgriTech for Kenya Innovation Challenge. And don't worry if you were not able to capture all these important elements. We will be able to provide you with a final report of our session today and the recording. So you will be able to deep dive on all these important aspects. So maybe I will also offer the opportunity to Luigi Luminari, who is a team leader at for the rural development unit at the Italian Development Cooperation Agency here in Rome. Based in Rome, but they would off from the office here in Nairobi, just to share just a reflection on today's session, you know, on the panel, and what was your feeling about this. Thank you, Luigi.
Thank you very much for first of all to invite me to represent the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation. My name is Luigi Luminari. I'm a team leader for agriculture, natural resource management, and we have an office here in Nairobi. It's a regional office that covers various countries, but we have a lot of activities in Kenya because historically we've been quite active in the Kenyan context. I will also bring forward the greetings from Director Giovanni. He couldn't attend the workshop, but I'm sure he will follow up initiatives. We'll be in touch with some of them. We will discuss further possible future. I didn't prepare really a very comprehensive kind of analysis of what we are discussing, very relevant issues. I've been working in Kenya for over 20 years and in Africa even more. And I know that the issue of how really to extend, to scale up innovation research to smallholders is a really critical issue. I will not add much of what has been discussed because you have a lot of expertise in these areas and they are all relevant topics. I would like just to stress the disconnection that sometimes we can see from the research to smallholders, that there are gaps sometimes in terms of try to test these technologies under the condition of farmers. And I really have a lot of confidence on methodologies that can involve farmers on farm trials to test under the farm condition these innovation technologies. For example, you can propose a new crop or new technologies, but what is the impact on the household work, on women workload, on cash flow of farmers? You know, can they pay when it is required? How really this have an impact on the cash flow of farmers? What could be the environmental impacts? Because we are very aware about the impact of climate change. And in my experience, I worked many years about the ASAL development. I know the risk of failures are so high that proposing to intensify the use of inputs and investments with external inputs can be very risky. So there should be strategies that try to minimize the risks rather than maximize production. So how we can help the farmers to have a more steady kind of production that minimize the risks of failure, because as I told you, it's very common. And in this regard, I would like also to stress that 2/3 of Kenya is under arid and semi-arid condition, which is increasing the risk of drought and so on. So any research or innovation that wants also to contribute to food security of the most vulnerable population, and talk especially about pastoralism, so the people that gain their livelihoods through livestock, nomadic or semi-nomadic livestock. I think there should be more emphasis on researching and generating innovation for these livelihood systems, because many times I cannot see really too much in this regard. So I just, with these few remarks, I wish you a very successful program. We'll be, of course, in touch. We have many initiatives in the country, irrigation, agroecological initiatives in Makueni, for example, irrigation in West Pokot. We are also very much interested in incubation services for AgriTech. And we are going to start a big program in Uganda where we try to link the we are trying to link the value chain to environmental conservation. So to promote a value chain that contribute to environmental conservation. I think this is the way forward if you want really to mitigate the very negative effects of climate change. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Luigi. It's also important to hear the perspective from a donor. And, it was important that you remind us about the importance, responsible investments, responsible scaling, to connect with the existing effort on the ground, right? We don't want to duplicate, we want to better connect and support what is going on already. And it's also important for us to have this kind of conversation. We cannot stop us of meeting, and it's actually a good sign that these meetings are happening because of the importance of sharing and cross-pollinate. Otherwise, we'll be in our silos. So meetings are really important, and reports are also equally important. To document what we do and ensure that these are reflected in the designing of our projects. Now, I know you're all very tired, and we still have one important session which is dedicated entirely to receive your feedback, because you are all here to actively engage in this designing and through the breakout session that we will have in a few moments. But before, I just wanted to introduce you very briefly to the AgriTech4Kenya Innovation Challenge. And allow me to also spend 1 minute to say a few words about this CGIAR Accelerator for Impact platform, which is an institutional effort led by the Global Partnership Unit at the Alliance Biodiversity International and CIAT. It's basically trying to bridge this gap between science and market and ensure that solutions that are developed by our scientists can be better connected to the ground, ensuring these are market viable and sustainable, but at the same time ensure that what is happening on the ground in the ecosystem can be heard and connected to our science. I think we have time to grow through this, and I want to spend a few more seconds about the AgriTech Innovation Challenge. And why are we doing it? It's exactly to ensure that we can identify solutions that are context specific and farmer centric. And also the reason why we have a wide range of value chain actors is exactly because we want to understand what are the challenges, what are the problems. We don't want to have startups and then look for the problems. We want to first identify what the problems are and then look for those solutions. And where we are looking is basically early stage innovations. Solutions that are basically up there, pre-seeds or seed stage, that could actually benefit from a program that would empower them, the team and entrepreneurs to go to market and help farmers. And we want to do it by better connecting to the farmers and ensuring that the farmer needs are better reflected in the construction, and the development of the solution itself. So who is eligible to apply to this innovation challenge? We have entrepreneurs, scientists, including CGIAR scientists, at least 5 innovations that should be selected will have to be a CGIAR-led innovation. And why we want to do it is because we want to deliver concrete, deployable, and sustainable solutions for smallholder farmers and value chain players. We have pre-identified a few priority areas that we want to share with you today in our breakout sessions, and that are related to development and adoption of digital use to enhance sustainable agricultural production, sustainable value chain development, and circular economy, agri-finance solutions. We are looking for solutions that can help us have a better use of water and new irrigation system. We're looking for solutions for livestock health and disease management, knowledge sharing and capacity building for gender and social inclusion. Exactly to fill the gap, from left from the extension service here in. Next slide. Why we are doing it? In terms of objective, we are looking for building a pipeline of investable innovations that can really help the government strategy, for to achieve the objective for food security by 2030. And we want to do it ensuring a close alignment to government objectives, but at the same time ensure that we are able, this is just a project. What we want is to ensure that we can bring all these players together because we want to trigger a conversation and an opportunity. So I think one goal for you all, before you leave this event today, is to ensure that you have at least 5 business cards in your pocket and you have 5 ideas, to nurture in the coming days, to have something to build on in the coming days. Now, what is important for CGIAR, we want to ensure that our portfolio of innovations is reflecting what the country needs are, and ensure that these are very well connected to the challenges. Now, what is the methodology that we have developed, and we test this methodology in other countries, and it's basically an iterative process for us. And what we are doing is to ensure that solutions, the methodology can be tailored and further improved. We started in January by looking at some of the elements and the trends at the country level, and we are now here, as part of this annual assessment to ensure that we could benefit from input. The idea is to launch the call for application in 2 weeks. We just need the time to finalize and ensure that the reports and all the elements we heard today are better reflected in the call for application. The next step is selecting the 25 innovations that will join us for an in-person bootcamp here in Kenya. And the 25 innovations will basically be selected with at least with 10 international innovations, and 10 innovations will have to be Kenyan-based, with 5 CGIAR-led innovations that, of course, are also Kenyan-based. Now, why are we trying to bring also external and international innovations? Because we know that solutions already exist, and can be redeployed in other contexts without reinventing the wheel. Maybe what is important for us is to incentivize the technology transfer among different countries, and ensure that we can benefit from other solutions already maybe tested and deployed in Tanzania or in Uganda that can actually fit the Kenyan context. We will enter in this bootcamp that will last between 3 and 4 days. The aim is to go from 25 innovation to 15 innovation that will benefit from a fully funded acceleration program. And there's a particular one because it will be executed on the ground and in hybrid mode. And this is basically a session, 6 months activities run with local partners that will really help a startup to connect to farmers and the partners will be working with. After that, the aim, we are still dreaming, to have these startups coming on stage, the Kenyan Innovation Week, where they will be pitching in a session in front of industry experts and investors. Now, the startups will not be left alone after this program. We have a program for alumni, and for all those that benefit from our activities, they remain involved. We have more than 3,500 startups provided and engaged with us in CGIAR, so we keep cultivating and ensuring that they are not left alone and behind. So we keep helping them, we keep providing and feeding. So this is something I heard today, that the mentorship and continuous support is important for these teams. So I think with this, I need to pass to Kevin, who will briefly explain you what we will be doing in this next session, and then a very short break and a picture, and they're back in the room for the actual work for today. Thank you.